Now we are starting with a new chapter, that is improvement in food resources. Now you know our day begins with food and it ends with food. That is how our life goes on. Food is the ultimate source of whatever energy you have to take inside your body. The minerals and the nutrients would be taken in the form of food. And recently what has happened is that there is a population boom in various countries. The global population is rising. And unfortunately, what is not rising is crop productivity. In the recent times, also on a positive note, the crop productivity increased in our country. Like for say, I would give you an example of green revolution and white revolution that came in our country. And as a result of these revolutions, the production of crops as well as the production of milk respectively in both the cases, it grew manyfold. So basically there is a need for improvement in the food resources at present, because though we have these approaches, both green and white revolutions at the global levels as well as the levels of our own national scale, but the improvement is required so that the global hunger index that is rising day by day, that is captured and that is controlled, that is well in control and well taken care of, and nobody dies of hunger or nobody goes to sleep with an empty stomach. Now the responsibility comes on those people who have a good mind and who have a scientific mind, who have the knowledge of these crops and the animal produce. Now why I am saying crops and animal produce, because ultimately whatever food you are consuming, it will have two sources. Either it would come from plants or it would come from animals. So in this chapter we are going to restrict our learning to the improvement in food resources, where two main topics would be dealt. First is that the plant sources from which the food is coming, we have to deal with that, and that is covered under crop yield improvement. Whatever food you are consuming, it would be in the form of crop, and we have to increase its yield both scientifically and at the grassroots level where the agricultural practices are being done, and we need a scientific know-how for that, because ultimately the production would increase if we bring in some sort of science into the production of a particular crop. And the second is animal husbandry. The second source of food is the animal produce, and that we are going to study under animal husbandry. Now let's take the first one into account. In the crop yield improvement, what you see over here is that there is a large stretch of field, and as you can make it out, it is a fully ripened crop ready for harvesting. It is being harvested by a combine harvester, and this crop is going to become food of somebody at some stage, and we need to increase the yield, okay, per hectare. That is the target of every individual whosoever is growing the crop. That person is also having the same target, that his crop yield per hectare should be more. And at the same time, the agriculturists who are studying this particular topic, they also want that the crop yield per hectare should increase. And why it should increase? Because in countries like India, the population is increasing at this rate and intensively cultivated land stays at that particular position. Now because of the revolutions like green revolution, we know that we already have that much land, and that too is being intensively cultivated. So what we have to resort to is a better management and improvement method which could give rise to more yield, and for that we have crop yield improvement mechanisms and patterns, in which the first one is that what you can do for improvement of yield is you can improve the variety of the crop. Okay. Now this improvement of variety of the crop involves genetic manipulations. When I say genetic manipulations, I am talking about the hybridization methods which are brought about. There are few scientists who study which is the best suited crop according to the conditions. There are various stresses and other climatic conditions which are taken into account. The biotic, the abiotic stresses are considered, the genetic varieties are considered, then the hybridization takes place, and the ultimate outcome is a crop which is responsible for giving a better yield in the given conditions. Okay. So let us see that what crop variety improvement is all about. So this is the first point in crop yield improvement. We will come to animal husbandry in the subsequent lesson, but for now we are dealing with crop yield improvement, where the first step happens to be crop variety improvement. See, this chapter is going to be about agriculture only. So, you might develop an interest in becoming a sophisticated farmer. Farmers are giving us a lot. We do not consider the work they are doing for us. So, if at all this chapter is able to make you feel compassionate for them, that would be quite good, and if you develop an interest, that would be more good. Let's talk about crop variety improvement. A farmer would need to be provided with good quality of seeds. Now, when I say good quality of seeds, that directly refers to a higher yield giving seed. Okay, the variety can be improved because we are dealing with crop variety improvement. How can the variety be improved? It can be improved by hybridization. Now, what is hybridization? It refers to genetic crossing between dissimilar plants. Supposedly, I need qualities of a particular crop, 2-3 qualities from a particular crop, and the other one is my parent crop. So, I would hybridize these two crops and get the qualities which I desired in the same plant, and in that way I would improve the variety of the crop. Now, there is step description, and there is one question that might erupt in your mind. You will find this question at many places, even in your syllabus context. You might find this question in your exams as well. What is crop variety improvement? We have discussed about it. It is the simple definition that this question demands. And next is, why is it important to improve our crop yield and quality, and what are the factors? Apart from this, we are going to see what are the factors which are important for the crop variety improvement. So, you see, this improvement depends on finding a crop. First of all, there would be a finding of a crop that can give a good yield. So, our target is getting a good yield out of the restricted land area. Such varieties are specifically chosen. You don't have to do that. There are many experts doing that. They then pass on the seeds to the farmers so that they can get the better yield. Such varieties are specifically chosen to give better yield even in many adverse environmental conditions. Now, let us talk about the factors for which this crop variety improvement is done, and then you will come to know that which adverse environmental conditions we are talking about. First is that the target is higher yield for increasing the productivity per acre of land. They have talked about per acre, I was saying per hectare, does not make much difference. Then there is an improved quality, that is, quality considerations vary from crop to crop as per the requirements. If supposedly I am talking about cotton crop, so the improved quality criteria would be different. If I am talking about maize, then the improved quality criteria would be different. So, that thing is kept in mind, and accordingly the improved variety or quality is considered. Then we have biotic and abiotic resistances. Now, biotic refers to living and abiotic resistance refers to non-living conditions which are going to pose a threat to the longevity of a crop plant. Crop should have sufficient resistance to biotic factors. Now, we had environmental conditions, we had talked about it. See over here, resistance to biotic factors like living factors like diseases. Supposedly, it is a fungal disease, it is a viral disease, bacterial disease. It must have resistance, sufficient resistance, which is often seen in wild varieties. Okay, and then we have abiotic stresses, non-living stresses like heat, cold, frost, etc. Now, if you listen to news regularly, you would have heard that a certain climatic condition is responsible for destroying a particular crop of farmers, and farmers are asking for some sort of relief by the government. Now, what are those conditions? They are abiotic stresses. Now, we need to develop those plants which are resistant to these abiotic stresses, so that supposedly some sort of abiotic stress comes, they are able to withstand that, and by withstanding that particular stress, they are able to give a better yield. So, this is the point that they are trying to highlight. Then we have change in maturity duration. The shorter the duration, the more economical is the variety. So, we often search for those plants which have a short duration of their reproductive phase, or I would say vegetative phase. Supposedly, you have a crop that takes 4 years. It would be better if you have a crop that takes 6 years, so you can have more productivity and more people would get food out of that. Now, there is wider adaptability that is considered. The plant which is obtained as a result of hybridization, it should be able to grow in different climatic conditions. That is again pointing towards the environmental conditions which is abiotic stresses it should be able to withstand. And desirable agronomic character. When I say agronomic, it refers to agriculture and economical aspect. So whatever agricultural and economic aspect we are requiring, it should have that desirable character. Okay. Now, special traits are desired: tallness and profuse branching for fodder crops. You can make it out. If I need a fodder crop, it must be tall so that I don't get these small plants and then I'm done with very less yield. If they would be higher in there, if they would be having greater height, I would say if they would be taller, it would be easier for me and the yield would be automatically greater. Dwarfness is desired for cereals. In the case of cereals, you won't have very tall plants. If you have ever happened to see a paddy field or a wheat field, you would see that they are short. Dwarf plants are preferred. So desirable agronomic characters can also be put in the condition of crop variety improvement. Now moving further, the next thing that is considered in crop yield improvement is crop production management. First of all, see, how do you plant a crop? Don't take example of crop, just take the example of a particular plant, fruit plant. Supposedly you decide to grow a fruit plant in your backyard and you choose the best seeds, the variety that you want. Consider you are planting a mango tree. Now there are many varieties of mangoes. Whichever you want, you would go and choose the particular seed. Okay, so there are different seeds. Those seeds would be introduced as per crop variety improvement. Now once that seed has been taken, now what you have to make sure is that it is sowed in a proper way, there is enough nutrient content in the soil where it is sowed, it is watered properly. So all those things which are involved in growing of the plant come under crop production. Now in crop production management, the first thing that we deal with is nutrient management. Now what is nutrient management? Nutrient management is basically providing the soil with all the desired minerals that a plant is going to require. Supposedly soil is deficient in something, so it must be provided externally or with our help by agency of human beings, so that the plant that is going to grow in that soil, it is not devoid of that particular nutrient. So that comes under nutrient management. Now in nutrient management, what we have is that we have to provide nutrients to the plant in the soil itself, and the nutrient management includes the manure and fertilizers. Okay, apart from providing with a fertile soil and best conditions, the nutrient management includes manure and fertilizers. Now in the case of manure, what you see over here is that there is a farmer, you see the crop field and he is throwing something. Now what is this? This is additional nutrients he is throwing into the soil so that the plants grow in a better way. We have the example of manure and the fertilizers. Now keep in mind that fertilizers are artificial ones and the manure which we are talking about, that is organic concept basically. Now in manure we have the example of vermicomposting. Now what is a compost? Compost is something where we have dead and decaying matter thrown into a pit and it decays on its own and it gets converted into manure, and that's what we see in the case of vermicomposting. This word itself is divided into two parts. We have talked about composting, and vermi refers to worms, and you might have heard that earthworm is the best friend of a farmer. That refers to vermicomposting. We use that concept, we make compost pits and over there we put the animal dung and it gets composted and it forms the vermicompost manure. The other condition is green manure. Now you might have heard about manure and vermicompost, but you might not have heard about green manure, but nowadays it is quite prominent and extensively talked about. So most of you must be knowing. What is green manure? You know, plants like hemp, sun hemp, they are picked as it is. They are, why it is called green manure, I am telling you that. They are picked as it is, they are uprooted, and they are sowed into the soil, okay. They are drilled and just plowed into the soil in a way that it stays green and it decays inside the soil. When it decays inside the soil, that is very much agitated, that soil is getting rich in the nutrients which this particular plant is having. Just keep in mind that you take a plant, you break it into small parts, then you just sow it like you are putting the green part into the soil. Now the soil is going to decompose it and take all the nutrients which are present in the live plant. That is why it is called the green manure. The natural way to improve soil is green manure. This is a sort of description where it is telling that what is the use of green manure. Now you must be knowing sun hemp is a weed, so it discourages the spread of weeds, it helps to prevent valuable nutrients leaching away over winter, especially in the areas where there is enough snowfall and the plants where they dry up. It is better way to use those resources, those weeds, in the form of green manure. Now moving further, when we are talking about manure, we have to move further to commercial fertilizers, where we have fertilizers like urea. You might have heard about it. The commercial fertilizers we are talking about, there is urea, there are Npk fertilizers. Now what is this Npk fertilizer? Npk fertilizer is a fertilizer where we put nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium into the soil. This is quite a descriptive picture. We have commercial fertilizers. Last we are going to see the difference between fertilizers and manures. There are few points enlisted. First is, fertilizers are inorganic substances. They are manufactured in factories. They have lot of polluting probability, not probability. They have lot of polluting potential. They can pollute the water bodies, they can pollute the soil. Manure is organic substance. That means it would be derived from organic content that is obtained from decomposing of vegetable and animal waste. Microbes are not needed for their formation in the case of fertilizers because it is an industry product. This needs microbes because we are talking about decomposition, and decomposition cannot take place without microbes. Okay, so the organic content gets degraded in the presence of microbes. Fertilizers are easy to transport. You must have seen it. It was very easy. That person was holding it in the hand and throwing it like this. The other one was vermicompost. You have to make a compost pit. These are not easy, these ones. They are not easy to handle, easy to store. They are difficult to transport, contrary to what there was in the case of fertilizers. They do not restore soil texture. Now this is an important point that you have to remember. That's why I said that they have lot of polluting potential. They are going to leach all the nutrients. That is why we had green manure, which was for the purpose of restoring the nutrients. They restore soil texture. So the polluting potential over here is very less. In fact, they are responsible for restoration of the soil, which is very important. They do not help in retention of water. That is why water leaches down. Of course, if they do not help in retention, why it is a better option? Because they help in retention of water. So this is the difference between fertilizers and manures.